And okay, let's start.
Okay. Well, Dom, thanks very much for having me, and thanks again for rescheduling from a couple weeks ago. Look, since this is a small group tonight, we can keep this informal. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have a question or you want to go a little deeper into something. This isn't a super long presentation, a little bit of a high level, but happy to have go into anything in more detail during the presentation or afterwards. So my background, I hate to say, I'm turning 50 next month or in April. So, my career now is 25 years plus. But most of my career, I've been a systems engineer. I'm trained in mechanical engineering, and spent the first half of my career working in telecom and wireless. And all of my work since college has had a really strong overseas traveling component. So quite a bit of work overseas. Have worked for both very large and very small companies. Which for me, I think is a good experience. It's good to understand the bureaucracy and how slow a large established public company really does move, and then compared to how fast you can move when you're a one-person shop or 10-person shop. Back in 2000, right at the end, right after the dot-com crash, which I lived through. Thankfully, I didn't have any stock, but I got a dream job opportunity with a large conservation nonprofit based here in Washington called Conservation International. And I had just finished a master's in environmental science and policy, and they hired me to become their global director of IT. I finished as a senior director of global strategy and development. But my main job there for 7 years was I built out their global IT network in 40 countries. And so ended up traveling overseas half the time, built an international team of 25, and put in high-speed internet at the time, whatever was high-speed internet, over satellite, DSL, microwave, whatever was the most cost-effective. But in countries like Papua New Guinea and Madagascar and Liberia, all over South America, but loved quite a bit of it. The one thing you learn though, even in the nonprofit world, is there's always office politics. You can't seem to get around. Where people are involved, you can't get around that. And I actually, I was there for 10 years, had my first layoff ever in April of 2009, which we can now call the last downturn, as we're kind of living in the current downturn from 10 years later. But that was my first layoff ever, and it was a little bit of a shock. But that's kind of what got this whole thing started. And in 2000, about 3 weeks after being laid off, I ended up organizing and holding what turned out to be the first social media conference on the East Coast here in Washington. It's so weird to think about how ingrained social media is in our life daily now, with TikTok and Facebook and Reddit. And back in 2009, Facebook was just becoming pretty mainstream. Twitter was just becoming mainstream after the 2008 election. We were really lucky. We had PBS NewsHour filmed a great 20-minute piece from the conference. And the title of it was something like, Twitter, is it a fad or here to stay? So, and then that led to, I did 20 conferences that year on my own across the US and Canada, and one in Dubai. This was partially because I really didn't know what I wanted to do after 10 years at Conservation International. So I was traveling through airports by myself with 4 laptops and 2 projectors, and putting on what was at the time called Cool Twitter Conference. by the time I was finished with the conference, I did finally receive a cease and desist letter from Twitter to stop using the name and the title of the conference. But so that led to in 2010, I had a book come out kind of based on the conferences, which is in that lower left corner, called The Big Book of Social Media Case Studies. And very much to my surprise, it got picked up and used as a textbook at about 10 universities. And that led to an idea which still seems kind of crazy at the time, launching what's still today the only print magazine about social media, called the Social Media Monthly. And we launched it actually launched it at a conference in New York in May of 2011. And 3 weeks later had distribution with Barnes and Noble across the US. And this was really, with no money, really no funding, running business off of credit cards. And that picture at Barnes and Noble next to Wired and Fast Company was the first day that it went on sale. And that was a Barnes and Noble in New York. And to have it next to Wired and Fast Company was just, a highlight for me. And within 4 months, he had global distribution for the magazine in about 20 countries. And we were Barnes & Noble across the US. We were in Chapters Indigo across Canada, and then overseas in a number of countries. Back in, I had started a Kickstarter for it, which at the time was, brought in 23,000 for the second magazine, and which today is like pocket change for Kickstarter. At the time, it was the most money raised for a publishing project. It magazine got a lot of great reviews. We were named one of the 15 hottest magazine launches of 2011. One of the highlights was having Fortune take a cue from our cover there, our cover I think is still better. It was 2011 and 12 and 13 were quite the whirlwind with the magazine. We did 17 issues. I raised a very small angel investment from the former CEO of Time Inc. in May of 2012. And the short version of that story is there was a 2-month marriage and a 3-year divorce. But it was really unfortunate. It was the only time I ever raised money, and it was the worst situation you could imagine for an entrepreneur, and really derailed this entire magazine business, which is what he was interested in to begin with. Anyway, it's a whole separate discussion, and I still even can't explain it very well 7 years later. So fast forward a little bit to we'll skip over 13, 14, and 15, which were some pretty lean years. And I have a couple of websites, those I still maintain today, that are still moderately successful, covering social media and digital marketing. But in 2016, after the Oculus Kickstarter, and after them being bought by Facebook, I was getting inquiries about, people were talking about social VR as an early application. So that's kind of how I started looking at VR, coming from the social media digital marketing side of things. I am a longtime video gamer, though. Started with a 2600, Atari 2600 when I was 9. And so I've always kept an eye on VR, from a gaming aspect. And in 2016, just did some one-off events, just to actually give people their first VR experience. We did these free events in different cities with some sponsorship. And then in through 27 and 18, was experimenting and doing one-off events in different verticals, and trying to see where the interest was. And it's hard to imagine we're having our 5th annual conference next week, but that first one we did was June 2017 here in DC at George Washington University Hospital, and we had 100 people in the room. But of the conferences that I was experimenting in, that was one of the more successful ones. Um, I think both in terms of attendance and interest. And and Dr. Walter Greenleaf, who some of you may be familiar with, did a remote keynote for that first conference. And then I partnered with him when we organized our second conference, which we did at Harvard Medical School in Boston in March of 2018. And that was a bit of a gamble because it's you pay quite a bit just to have the name of Harvard to do an event at, and it was quite an expensive investment. And if it didn't go well, it would have been a pretty big loss, and probably the end of whatever business I was doing at this point, which was still just kind of experimenting and doing conferences. But that was really successful. We had 250 attendees, and we had 6 tracks, which was about 3 tracks too many. And yeah, you have a question, Chris?
No, I was just saying I was one of the attendees.
Oh, you were
in Boston. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And yeah, so it was a good event. And so after that, I started thinking that maybe healthcare was the place to be focusing. And I started a year-long conversation with HP. And in December of 2018, they agreed to be a founding member of this VR and Healthcare Association idea. It's just really all it was at the time. And we then, after the conference in Boston, we followed up with our first conference in Europe, in Zurich in December. And then at the conference, last conference you were at, Chris, at Tucson, we formally launched the association there with 40 founding member organizations. And that's, I think, the next slide here. Yeah, so these were the 40 founding member organizations. This slide is 2 years old. I haven't had a chance to really put a new one together. We're now close to 100 member organizations. All in less than 2 years, we've more than doubled the size of the membership. And it's a very, it's a small business. It's 2.5 people. I'm one full time, and my wife is the half time. And it's but it's growing. It's been growing very fast. It's ever since that conference in Tucson, Chris, it's been really just very nonstop, day in and day out for 2 years straight, and really prioritizing every single day what to focus on. So over the last couple of years, as I've learned the healthcare space, which I don't come from traditionally, and understand, and going to market to healthcare, I think is much more difficult and problematic than going to market in other verticals. It has a lot more complications than just launching a product into retail, say, or other businesses, because you have the regulatory aspect, you have an efficacy aspect. You just have a lot more hurdles. Plus, who's going to pay for it? It's that much more, and here in the US, paying for healthcare, as we all know, is a huge complication. And the other thing about healthcare, that I intuitively knew before and have learned, more concretely the last couple of years, is, it's an industry that's very slow to change as well. It's slow. I mean, I think, the COVID experience of the last 12 months is a perfect example. I've been using video conferencing for 20 years now, but somehow, mainstream America and mainstream corporate America has only seemed to discover video conferencing through Zoom just a year ago. And, because of that, though, I mean, it's helped jumpstart digital health a bit more, and telemedicine has gotten much more stronger use, even though the telemedicine has been a very viable application for, more than 15 years. But now it's finally getting the attention it deserves. more through necessity than anything else. And that's just demonstrates how slow traditional healthcare can be to adopt IT. I mean, look at the problem we still have with personal health records and data management. It's a mess. So when I say a 20-year journey, I really mean that, because as much as the industry is taking off very fast, it's even the last 12 months has been more development than the prior 2 years. There's a great presentation next week. I was talking with Behave VR, one of our members, and even much to my surprise, he's going to be presenting how much the market has changed just in the last 6 months. And a lot of it is due to COVID. A lot of it is due to looking for more at home and remote prescriptive applications. But even with that said, though, it's, for a lot of these applications to become mainstream, it's going to take, 5, 10, 15 years. And, the reason is, I think even still today, the assumption going in should be that 99% of healthcare is not aware of or doesn't understand VR. I think that's very, very true today. I think it's going to be a very long haul. Healthcare makes up 20% of our economy. That's a huge, huge amount. Very large area to cover, a lot of people to inform and train. And it's just going to take time and effort to educate this marketplace, educate physicians, educate nurses, educate hospital administrators. Just think about how many people do you know that have not even tried VR yet? Maybe you haven't even tried VR yet. I don't know, but that's the situation right now. So 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we'll see. But I've been really encouraged. The last year holiday was amazing for the Oculus Quest 2. Sold out in many places. You couldn't get it. The Quest from the 2019 holiday was a huge win. Oculus coming out with games based on Star Wars has brought a lot of attention, and I think it can only get better from here. I think one of the things that I think is really interesting when we look at VR hardware compared to other sectors, even mobile phones from 10 years ago, we're looking at generational changes every 6 months in the hardware side of VR right now. And that's, unbelievably fast, which is also creates a lot of problems as well from an adoption standpoint, because just as, and Oculus has already created headaches by making both the sorry, losing my train of thought. The first Oculus headset, can't remember the brand name, and the Rift though obsolete, and a lot of startups and businesses had actually developed software for that, for the 3DOF Quest version. It's not called the Quest.
The Oculus Go?
The Go. Thank you.
The Go.
Thanks, guys. I was having a brain fart.
It happens. By the way, I got in early like you did. I got into VR in the mid 80s with DARPA's $240 million SimNet program.
Okay.
So that was a while ago.
It's gotten a little better since then, I think.
So the association is just 2 years old now. Again, it's been 100 miles an hour and trying to do quite a lot with a very small amount of resources. And what is our focus for the next few years? I think it's education, and it's more education. last August, we did a free event online, and we had 50 companies present over 4 days. And it was a much more commercially focused event where the companies were allowed to be pretty salesy and demonstrate what they're doing. After all those presentations are available for free on the IVRHA main website now. Very easy to watch. There's no door lock to it. Again, not the term I was looking for. No wall garden to it. And next week we're doing our 5th annual conference online because of COVID. We would have been in Nashville again, but I'm actually quite pleased with how it's come together. We're going to have a pretty good turnout. I think we've got a fantastic program. 4 days of great content. Have found a platform for some very unique networking, which I think is most virtual events have not been doing very well. I think this platform does an interesting job. We've made it as affordable as we can, and you get a free hard copy of the book that's coming out in late March, April, as part of the ticket, which is about 75% of the cost of the ticket. So if you can join us, please, you're welcome to do so. And then, just to touch on an event I started kind of for fun, but also because I thought we needed our own, focus day for education purposes for the public. I started an event called Virtual Reality Day back in 2017. Normally it's an in-person physical event. So in 2017, we had 7 cities simultaneously holding events, all on the last Saturday before Black Friday. And in 2018, it ballooned to 76 cities, and we did a 24-hour event in AltSpace and had over 1,400 attendees. And in 2019, a little less on the cities. And what was interesting because of that was back in 2018, a good number of those participating local organizers were VR arcades that unfortunately were no longer in business a year later in 2019. And then just last November, we did just an online event in AltSpace because of COVID, but had a wonderful turnout. We'll be planning again for this coming year, which will be the fifth conference for Virtual Reality Day. And there's no business model behind this. There's no revenue. Occasionally we get a little bit of sponsorship support for some marketing dollars, but that's about it. This is my contact info. I try to make myself, very easily available. That is my actual direct cell phone number. Please don't call me in the middle of the night. You're welcome to text me though anytime. I think that's all I have.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions? Want to ask Bob? Oh, okay.
202 is in the Washington, D.C. area, Bob?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
202 Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, from your experience in virtual reality, I'm wondering which are the top industries that are currently using VR? Because I'm surprised that healthcare is not one of them. And I'm wondering, do you think that they will be more focused on it because of the pandemic? And if yes, do you think they will shift back away from digital virtual reality after the end of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, actually, I think healthcare actually is one of the top industries for applications. I think first and foremost is gaming and entertainment, by a magnitude, easily, and then I think healthcare and training and industrial design are pretty even with each other. I've been developing a relationship with Unity and had after waiting a long time. Had an interesting discussion with them the other day. And unfortunately, healthcare is not at the top of their agenda right now, because it's not a $500 million market just yet. So, because they're a public company, the low hanging fruit for them are games and industrial manufacturing, and design. And even from I don't understand enough about their business model, because the majority of their money is on developer licensing, and there's only so many developers. They don't sell on a runtime license. So I'm still learning where the majority of their money comes from, but they're looking for really big markets that they can get into. Healthcare will be one of them, but it's just not today.
There's a lot of concepts to unpack here, like the software industry. I come from the software industry. We've been saying we should be learning from gaming, because they took software to the next level, really, in a lot of ways. Unity being one of the companies that did that. VR, with healthcare, there are so many different sections of VR in healthcare. There's VR in healthcare to treat, for example, PTSD and mental illness. I think that's probably where we're seeing the most success. I'm not sure if that's true or not from your experience, Bob.
I mean, mental health is a big area, not just PTSD, but all forms of mental health support. And then physical rehab is coming on very strong. A lot of early applications to treat stroke rehab, physical rehab, coming back from an accident. It's I mean, the fascinating thing about the healthcare side is, every single healthcare ailment you can think of, someone is trying or is experimenting is there an application for VR for it?
Yeah, that's one.
Physical fitness is a huge one, which plays a big role in the health. And I think what's really interesting too is there is a great crossover with the gaming sector, because there a huge number of the applications
There has to be.
are gamified. It's about, and the reason it's working is, people are finding it's easier to do their physical therapy or their rehab if they're engaged in VR than traditionally, because it's more fun and they forget about, the pain side of it.
Yeah. I had a hard time talking to people like surgeons about thinking about VR, because in one of the surgeons says, we've had VR, we've had these goggles that you put in, and these are multi-million-dollar machines. Why would we get like a $450 VR headset? Like,
Right.
I'm trying to explain that there's more to it than your operating room. How about training? So I'm curious about how it crosses in like which directions people are taking that is actually having success. I think once you walk in that door, like for example, once you get the medical students using VR in college, then they're more open to how they can use it in their industry day-to-day jobs.
Well, training is huge for healthcare, both for medical students, both for continuing education for nurses and surgeons. If you go to the event website for next week and you just browse the agenda and the presentation titles, you'll then see how much is happening.
Yeah, I've been out of it for a couple of years, so I'm really happy to come back and see how far it jumped in those 2 years.
Well, and the other thing that it's proving out in the medical education side is that there have been a number of studies, and they're continuing to come out to demonstrate that the learning and the memory retention for students learning it in VR versus traditional methods is just astronomically higher. So med students that are learning the same, say, orthopedic procedure in VR versus a traditional method are scoring better and doing better than those students on the traditional method.
A friend of mine, Bob, tested that is book learning versus VR up at the University of Washington, and it was like the 20/80 rule. Not only did the VR group learn faster, but they retested a year later, and the book group remembered about 20% of the material, the VR group over 80%. So it's not just learning faster, but also remembering much, much, much better, because there was memory has emotion involved with it, and immersive technology like VR, I'm telling you, immersive technology like VR really cranks up that emotion.
Right. Well, I think VR just helps demonstrate that it's not, it's not necessarily VR that's the magic. It's experiential learning and it's on the job learning that makes the difference. And I mean, unfortunately, well, you know what our education system in the U.S. is like, and what it's going to take to change that. One of the projects I've been trying to find funding for, which I'd like to see a pilot study done at the state level, is using VR for job retraining, and for a healthcare type position, not somebody that would be going to medical school, but might be a technician position, a phlebotomist, other areas that do require some technical understanding. And because I don't think there are any government job training systems, I don't think have done very well.
Are you thinking to test efficacy compared to other retraining methods?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm trying to see if there's I mean, I think we just need a pilot study just to demonstrate it first and see what might work and what might not work. But that hasn't been done at the state level yet.
Yeah. Part of my experience, and I'm not sure if this is yours as well, is when I talk to a company that wants VR, they don't know what they want. They just want VR, which makes
Right.
it frustrating with like, okay, what are you trying to do with it? Like, we want to use it to better the way we do things, but what are you trying to better? So it's kind of, I don't know. I find it very frustrating to come up with a plan or help them think, because they're the ones that should be leading that process. I don't know how much of that has been your experience, and I'm curious to hear if you consulted on a project like that where you're helping a company figure out what they could do with VR in healthcare.
Well, I've been doing, I've done IT consulting on and off for most of my career. So, doing a job requirements document and working with clients is something I have a lot of experience in. And I think, if you can get paid for the time involved in having to help define what the project is and help them figure out what they want and what they need, then you've got something. What's funny when you say, they don't know what they want or what they need. I've got the same problem with the association. I've got VR startups that are members of the association, but they don't know or what they want or what they need out of the association or being part of an industry group. And it's a member driven organization, and I'm trying to provide the services and products that they need to be successful and for the industry to grow. But a lot of time I'm also working with people that don't know what they don't know or what they need as the next step. And so, we're trying to anticipate that as much as we can, but you can't work completely in a vacuum, and you can't guess, for everybody. But we're developing white papers, trying to make material. We're trying to provide both education, both for the industry, but also for the end user. And the end user I'm focused on is more the commercial side, not the patient side, but the patient end user is a large part of this healthcare economy. But trying to provide education for the patient is a little bit more problematic, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near that anytime soon, because to be able to be qualified as a medical device, which you're going to have to be if you're trying to be in front of patients, that's going to be a long time process. That's not like,
Well,
we just got
actually,
the software
there
as
are
a medical device.
There
right?
are applications already being approved by the FDA. It's early days though, and the healthcare and the insurance companies are already involved. We have United Healthcare is doing a keynote next week. They are looking at how to reimburse. How do you reimburse for these things? How do you pay for them? As long as at the end of the day, if you can prove and you can demonstrate that the patient is getting is receiving better care or getting the same kind of care at a cheaper cost than the way they were being cared for before through VR, then health insurance will pay for it. If it saves them money and the patient is doing well from it, it's a win-win. But they do want to see that. They want to see the data though that proves that.
Yeah, it's a long road. I remember in Tucson, there was a legal seminar, and the lawyers essentially said that the legal aspects, including data from sensors and so on, where it goes, who owns it, is the wild, wild west. I've been in over, since you asked what do they want, I've been in over, I think, $540 million worth of VR programs, something like that, around the world. And two things we learned was, one, it's not what they want, it's what they need. Never, never reply to what they want. It's what you need. And the second was, if they're 100% satisfied, if it 100% meets the answers the mail, you've done something wrong. At most, it should be 80% in order to keep prices and speed and development times down. So the
Right.
80% solution, and it's what they need, not what they want, were pieces of wisdom that cost a lot.
Yes, I totally agree with you on the software end, but the funny thing is what we're getting is they don't even know what they want or need. They just want to use VR, which was an interesting. I've never seen this was a few years back when we go in and they have an idea, they want to use VR, and they're trying to pick our brains of how they could use it. You know, like we had a meeting with General Electric, for example. They wanted to start a VR division, but they didn't know how to use it. They didn't know what they want to use it for. They just wanted to start a VR division. So
Well,
I don't.
sometimes that's not a bad thing. At some point you have to start experimenting and getting your feet wet and throwing things against the wall.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Yeah.
where we said, here are a bunch of sets, start experimenting. We don't know what else to tell you.
Rapid prototyping. If you want to make money in VR, in my humble opinion, the number one customer is military.
Yeah.
They military, and I've worked CIA, military, and so on. They spend many, many billions, and it's good, steady money. Number two is probably gaming. That's very, very, very risky. 95% plus go bust. Number three is probably industrial, like Walmart with 17,000 Oculus Go headsets, training 1 million employees. And then number four is probably medical and healthcare.
I wonder how Walmart felt about buying 17,000 Go headsets for them to be obsolete less than a year later.
It scares me.
One of the real impediments, I think, to the growth of the entire space is we need a mainstream competitor to the Quest. The Quest is a great product. It really is. It's the reason it's the interface is great. It's designed well. It's easy to use. But Facebook is one, they're not interested in the business side. They're only interested in the individual consumer side. They have this business, Quest version that you pay twice as much for. And then they've created this whole data privacy issue by forcing people to have an account now on Facebook. So, for the life of me, I really can't understand why Facebook isn't investing. It's not like they don't have the money, investing in a proper enterprise division. They could be making money hand over fist.
They were the wrong company to take this effort, like to lead this effort, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like they want to use it in their infrastructure. They want to use it in the way they're running business to further their business as one of their tools, which is not. And unfortunately, they're just the winner by far. So we absolutely do need a competitor, but nobody's taking up the mantle.
Maybe it'll be Apple. Maybe it'll be HP, though they've been kind of slow. But we need the competition too. Though Facebook has made it competitively priced, but people, unfortunately, all the startups and companies are not going to buying Quest. They're buying Pico headsets and Lenovo and who's the other one, and some HTC, but not necessarily with the greatest support, not the greatest name recognition, and and just small hardware device user bases that are don't have the large company backing to grow it fast.
Yeah, I think if
Saying that Microsoft with the HoloLens 2 Plus, instead of going for a general market and so on, they're very focused on specialized industrial and military. They sold $480 million worth to the IVRHA program of the Army. They're doing $1 billion follow-on with the 2 Plus, with all kinds of great stuff in it. It's amazing. It turns you into a Superman, but it ain't cheap. You know, $5,000–$10,000 plus, and it's very focused. No general market like Facebook.
I mean, with the cost, I mean, even a developer can't afford a HoloLens to work on.
No. I think at the end of the day, the end user would be willing to pay more than Facebook is asking for a competitive product. The only problem, like the biggest problem we faced, and I started early as well. I started with the first Oculus, the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing that we had a problem with is you can't use it outside. You're wired up. Like we'd have to put a laptop. You know, it's just too hard to deal with, to do things, to do the cool things you could do, to do military training live in a battle, quote unquote, kind of battleground, right? That was the first uses. That was the military was the first to come out and say, this is what we want to use it for, right? But it was too hard to do back then, and now Facebook is got the line to that, and I don't know if any product that can compete with it.
I mean, well, I don't know. You know, tell me where $3 billion from Magic Leap went.
Excellent question.
I mean that. I mean, you're laughing, but that's an insane amount of cash to not. You know, and I think I'm personally, I think Magic Leap started out of the gate. They just priced it too high, and they priced it at a price point that still was not an easy purchase for a developer. And, you know, if they seeded the developer market, if they just got them out, if they, you know, look, at least, you know, Oculus is losing money in the hardware, of course. And it's the same console software business model. You know, console's a loss leader. You make money on the software.
Yeah, for the HoloLens or AR, the military can afford that, so they're going to be leading a lot of that in both training. They're going to use it operationally too, for day-night vision, for distance things, for showing you maps of where you are. It's fascinating how many things they got under development, but with $1 billion first for phase one, they can afford it.
Yeah, actually, there will be a presentation next Friday from Mark Griswold from Case Western, and they've been one of the leading universities doing healthcare development on HoloLens, and they've been a really early Microsoft partner. But again, you know, it's a very niche, expensive product that, you know, a lot of colleges can't afford to buy in volume.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like on the industrial side. I don't think price is an issue for the device, like most devices. But at the same time, we don't have options. Like it's not like we really have options. Each option comes with its own limitation. And Facebook, as far as I know, does not have like an industrial version without the removal of all the limitations of their.
Well, they do. They do have a business version of the Quest, which costs like it's 150% markup. I mean, it's like maybe $1,500 or something, with required purchase of support, and I think it allows you to load whatever you want on it. But again, I think it's too expensive for most companies to buy into, and it feels like a loosely supported option at this point.
Yeah, I gotta look into that. I don't remember. I've been out of it for 2 years, so I don't know if that. You're talking about the wireless? It's like the
Quest. Yeah, Quest 2. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Is that what you? I have a Quest 2. Is that what you have as well, Bob?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And of course, I still have several Oculus Go's sitting around.
I'm telling you, you can get some good money on eBay for those. I sold mine, 6 months ago.
The good thing about them I'm looking at a couple of things to sell 10 to 12 minute videos, 360 videos online. The good thing about them is that you can do it in your chair. There's no temptation to get up and start
Right.
stumbling around the room and hurting yourself. So
Right.
and it's easy with just one controller. So for legal liability, and remember, we're in the US, we're ruled by lawyers. For legal liability, the Go was great.
Well, and we have a lot of startups that are focused on elderly care and support, and the Go is more than sufficient for most of those applications. And then they, one of our startups, Viva Vida, they building a business off the Go, and then before they know it, no, they can't even buy them anymore. Then
they still work though. They still work.
Well, they still work, yeah. But then, but if something happens to him, then you gotta try and fix it, and you can't get it fixed.
But that's why they came up with classification of devices. So the Go is made for experience, like it's a they call it experience. Like it's only for experiences, not so much for gaming. I don't remember the different classifications now they have, but
yeah, I mean, it's just less interaction. Yeah. But the thing is, once you, I mean, I think once you start using a Quest, it's hard to go back to the Go.
Yeah. So you can still sit down and use it. And the big thing, my favorite thing about the Quest 2, it's wireless. That is, you can take it on a trip with you.
Oh yeah,
I like it. All these things that you need to connect to a computer or a PlayStation or God knows what, just pack it and go.
I love everything about it except that Facebook has got its hands way deeper into this one. Like you can't log into the Oculus account anymore. You have to use a Facebook account. But it's lighter, like it doesn't hurt your head if you're wearing it for a long time as the other one did. And they did a lot of things better. It's just that they went that extra step to more integrate it more into their platform. And it's
the Apple model.
So I can take one or two more quick questions, but I need to,
right.
It's 11 o'clock for me.
Thank you very much for this, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good seeing you again. We'll have to, email me because I don't remember what you're working on and stuff.
One of them is for training. In fact, the retraining thing you're talking about. So that's a whole, both for civilians and for military, grabbing them. There's a way to start training military even before they leave the service.
Okay.
And lots of them have big problems, drug problems and whatnot, because they get out and they have no jobs. Right. So there's some funding available for that.
Well, I mean, there might be some opportunities there. I've built a good relationship with the state of Tennessee. They've been a sponsor of the conference now 2 years, and we'll be back at Vanderbilt next year. And they're interested in trying to figure out job retraining opportunities in the more rural areas.
And they're much better visually and experientially trained. They're not big on the country mice are not big on book learning.
Well, I don't know. I try not to. I don't think looking at that's necessarily the best way. But it's just what's the best way of learning for anybody, whether you're from the suburbs or not, or rural.
21st century learners are experiential. They're having more problems with book learning. So experiential is, like you said, it just, especially for STEM, in just about every test, the graphic wins. The big problem is that there's no real courses for T3. Teach the trainers or teach the teachers in how to use VR and game-based learning. There are no master's courses in it. There's, except in the military, no one is training teachers on how to use it in most classrooms.
I think I think there is some out there, but it's early.
Almost nothing.
Really?
I've looked.
Well,
I had a
I
long
mean,
discussion with the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education on this theme, and he agreed and with the Assistant Secretary of Defense for ATL, and they agreed. They said there's just no funding mechanism. And the head of the Federation of American Scientists said, what we need is a DARPA of education on using educational technology such as VR.
yeah.
I think right now it's still in the universities. It's too, they're still experimenting. So right now educators are gonna mess with it in the labs and universities. They're not at a point where they can start to build ideas with it yet, at least.
We need master's programs.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
Okay.
very, very much, Bob.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Bob.
thank you.
It's nice to
And
join.
yeah, if you want to join Bob's event, feel free to get the link and buy the ticket, and you can see Bob there. And feel free to connect with Bob through the chat. You can see the LinkedIn. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Bob. And I will send you the following up email with the recorded video. And thank you everyone to join this event. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique.
Yeah,
Take
thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.